Do you think you know the people around you? You think you can tell when someone is harmful, when the energy is heavy, or when someone is acting in a way that is not accepted? What if I told you that the real risks are not clear? That the most dangerous people are often attractive, nice, or even family members? And that as you try to keep the clear bad guys out, you are actually letting the much more dangerous unconscious minds of other people into yours. Carl Gustav Jung spent his whole life researching these hidden forces. He shows in his book The Ego and the Unconscious that most of what really controls us is not something we are aware of. That's right, this is true for everyone, not just you. And right there is where the danger is. Because a shadow looks for a home when a person can't see its own darkness. Most of the time you are that host. It's possible that you have never thought about this before. Now though, think about how many times you felt emotionally drained after talking to someone. How many times have people blamed you for something you didn't do or made you look like the hero of a tragedy that wasn't even your fault? Jung called this projection, which is when someone else puts onto you what they don't want to see in themselves. After that, you stop being a person and turn into a mirror, a symbol, an imagined enemy, or an idolized hero. You can tell these pictures aren't really you because they're all different. The scariest thing about this game is that you don't always know you're in it. You believe that you are being kind, caring, and grown up when you do this. At the same time, you're sinking into a psychological field that isn't yours, trying to solve problems that aren't yours and being controlled by forces that you didn't make. This isn't just about bad people either. Jung was very clear: the most dangerous perverts are not the ones who are aware of their behavior, but the ones who are not integrated and are unaware. People who live separated from their own minds because of masks, traumas, complexes, and repressed urges. They're not bad, but they are risky. This danger is quiet. It doesn't come in the front door. It creeps in slowly, every day, through small talk, whispered accusations, and tense silences, until you begin to question yourself. You become a part of someone else's shadow when you lose touch with your own mental reality. It's possible that you are going through this right now in a family, a friendship, a relationship, or even at work. You might also be blaming yourself and trying to figure out what's wrong. There is no answer. But there is something very wrong with the way you are being used to hold someone else's mind. In this video, we'll show you one by one the 6 types of people Jung thought were emotionally risky. These are people who don't do bad things on purpose but are controlled by forces inside them that they don't understand. That's why they do so much damage. To show you how to spot these profiles, we will use Jung's own words, ideas, and warnings from his books like Ion, The Ego and the Unconscious, and Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. Better than that, we will open your eyes to the idea that maybe, just maybe, one or more of these profiles also lives in you. Are you all set? Next, take a big breath and move on. But be careful, because after hearing this, you will not see people or yourself the same way again. Just picture living with someone who blames you for everything they feel and uses your presence as a trigger to make you feel bad about things you didn't do. At first they seem weak, sensitive, and deep, but after a while you realize you're being dragged into a battleground that isn't yours and where you already have an edge. This is the unconscious manipulator, someone who doesn't know their own hurts but puts them on other people as a way to stay mentally stable. Jung said, what we don't face in ourselves we will face as fate. And fate often has a name, a face, and a seat at the table with you. The unconscious manipulator is someone who is controlled by repressed emotions, unresolved traumas, and emotional pieces that have not been handled. Instead of looking at themselves, they aim at you, using you to show how they feel about themselves. For this kind of person, projection is a way of life. Jung said that projecting is a natural part of the mind, but it can be harmful if it is not acknowledged. He writes in The Ego and the Unconscious that projection makes us psychically blind. It locks us up so we can't see the other person as they really are. Instead, it turns them into a sign of what we're hiding inside. The unconscious operator acts like they see you, but really they see a lost part of themselves and act on it as if it were real. These people often act like they are victims. It's always someone else's fault when bad things happen. If they are angry, it's because you made them angry. If they are sad, it's because you let them down. It's because you think you are better than them that they feel weak. This distortion is so slight that you start to wonder if you were really rude. What did I say wrong? Am I dangerous? Thus, influence takes place even though no one yells or directly asks for it. It's all unconscious, emotional, and very powerful. Even worse, a lot of these people are nice. They have charm, empathy, and a strong emotional aura. You fall into a trap when you think you can help them, fix them, or understand them better than other people. In reality, though, you're hurting your own mental health by trying to help someone who won't look inside themselves. You sink deeper the more you try. Jung says these patterns of projection are especially dangerous because they make us into someone or something other than who we really are. Like a hero, an enemy, a traitor, a father, a mother, or anything else. If you live in a metaphorical bond, you are living a lie. You are no longer seen as a subject, instead you are seen as a skewed mirror of someone else's unconscious. To stay safe from an unconscious manipulator, you need to become more aware. Look for patterns, cut the invisible lines that connect you to their emotional story, and most importantly, ask yourself all the time if the feelings you're having are really yours or were made up. The unconscious deceiver doesn't come into your life violently. They sneak in through the space where you don't understand them. Once you know what this pattern is, the next step is to figure out how it hides itself even more with the character. The person who not only acts but also presents themselves as someone they are not. We will talk about the persona bearer and how it represents one of the biggest psychological risks that Jung talked about in the next part. The unconscious manipulator will use your problems to get what they want, but the image bearer can take you to a place where you forget who you are. If you understand what's being said, please click the subscribe button to help the program. Thank you for your help. Not all psychological danger comes from acting in very bad ways. It can come from things that look too good, like a smile that's always ready, perfect stance, or an image that looks perfect. These days, how things look is more important than how they really are. Jung thought this was a big problem because when someone connects too much with their persona, the social mask they use to fit in, they risk losing touch with who they really are. If you live for the mask, you lose yourself and start to change everyone else around you. The persona, according to Jung, in the ego and the unconscious, is what someone is not but what he and others think he is. It is a made-up thing that is shaped by demands from family, friends, and work. The character is not a mistake in and of itself, we all use it. It lets us play social roles like teacher, doctor, child, and friend. When someone thinks they are only that, that's when the trouble starts. People hide their true selves when they wear masks and keep their spontaneous, open, and honest feelings hidden deep inside. The ego holder is very good at playing nice. They always say what other people want to hear, act in the right way, and try to stay out of trouble at all costs. But there is a soul in ruins behind the wall of power. The more they hold on to the image, the more they smother their real selves, and this will eventually catch up with them. It has a huge effect on the people who live with this kind of person. There's something wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. Communications aren't as spontaneous, honest, or deep as they could be. It all looks like it was practiced. Even worse, the image bearer puts this expectation for perfection on you as well, expecting you to do well, fit in, and play your part. If you show a feeling that isn't in the script, like doubt, pain, or vulnerability, they pull away, get uncomfortable, or shut down. Anything that makes them think about what they're holding back becomes painful. It is one of the biggest dangers to the process of individuation, which is the road of self-knowledge and unconscious integration, as Jung warned. He thinks the real danger starts when someone hypnotizes themselves into thinking they are only their part, their image or their mask. If someone only wants to be liked, accepted and praised, they become a prisoner of their own mask. Everything dies, suffocating under the surface. When you live with someone like this, you might start to question your own spontaneity. You might start to police yourself, watch what you say and hide parts of yourself that don't fit the ideal story. Slowly you might start to put on a mask too, and most of the time you won't even notice. Living with someone who is the character is not only fake, it's also contagious. But there's something even scarier about it. Feelings, thoughts and wants that are pushed down for too long don't go away. They grow and change into shadow in the mind. Then we go into even more dangerous territory, the world of feelings that have been pushed down but then come back with a bang. We will talk about the person who owns the buried shadow next, the one who won't see their own darkness until it comes out. Certain types of people live in a polished, restrained way, always being right, moderate and nice. It looks like everything is in balance, but there is a force about to break free. They put everything they think is bad, ugly or not okay in the basement of their mind. It's not defeated or changed, it's just pushed down. This is what the owner of the hidden shadow is really like. Someone who always tries to be light but can't until darkness takes over. Carl Jung spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the shadow is. He writes in Ion, the shadow is everything that the individual refuses to recognize in themselves, but insists on manifesting in some way. The shadow is inside the person, not outside. It's the hate you don't want to accept you feel, the envy you try to hide, the sexuality you try to hide, and the ambition you try to hide by acting humble. Everything you don't like about yourself doesn't go away, it just changes into a shadow. What you do not make conscious directs your life. Jung taught, this is what you call destiny. When you first look at the person who has a repressed shadow, they might not seem dangerous. In fact, they are often respected, disciplined, kind and helpful. But there's something strange about them. They don't like it when other people are weak. They don't like being surprised, are bothered by strong feelings and always seem charged. But they never explode. Until they do, and it's terrible when that happens. This person is always on high alert emotionally. Because they don't let themselves feel, they judge people who do. Because they don't let themselves heal, they attack people who do. They become moralistic, demanding and bossy. All of this though is just an attempt to keep the unconscious in check. It was clear to Jung that the stronger the persona, the more repressed the shadow, and the more repressed the shadow, and the more repressed the shadow, the worse it shows up. This pattern can be seen in people who respond out of proportion, get angry over small things, hold grudges for years, or use passive-aggressive behavior to hurt relationships. People like this are called difficult because no one can figure out why they are so angry, critical, or unhappy. The answer is in the shadow, not part of the group, not known, not accepted. The most important thing to remember is that the shade is not only bad things. Jung said it also holds your repressed creativity and hidden powers, as well as your denied potential. But if you don't deal with the shadow, it turns into poison that ruins relationships, places, and especially the people you care about the most. Being close to someone who represses their shadow is like walking next to an emotional minefield. You have no idea where you're stepping until you get hit. But this kind of oppression doesn't just appear out of thin air. Guilt is often used as a way to control people because it gives them a false sense of superiority or a strict moral ideal. Now we'll talk about the next type, the moral manager. This is someone who not only hides their own wants but also makes other people feel bad for following theirs. Jung saw this archetype as one of the biggest barriers to mental freedom, the guardian of virtue who hides their own demons. In the next section, we'll take this archetype off its cover. Not all people who kill people use swords. Some use crosses, rules, dogmas, or words that are already written. A lot of them say they are motivated by ethics, morals, and right and wrong. but deep down, they lock themselves and others up in a cage made of shame and guilt. Jung knew this character very well. He thinks that morals used as a mask is one of the sneakiest ways to hide your true feelings. This is the moral controller, someone who doesn't accept their own shadow but instead puts it onto others and judges what they won't accept about them. You've probably met someone like this. They blame others a lot but never look at themselves. Who think they are moral experts but not because they are, but because they need to look like they are better than everyone else. Jung said the greater the repression, the more intense the need to project the shadow. They make other people into sinners, deviants or evil people so they don't have to deal with their own urges and conflicts. The trouble is that the moral controller thinks they are doing good, which is different from most manipulators. They really believe they are helping or fixing others. This makes their influence even worse, even though they hide it behind authority, good ideals, and fake spirit. People often say things like, "It's for your own good, you'll thank me later," or "Someone needs to tell you the truth." But this truth is full of fantasy. Jung talks a lot about the images of Christ and the Antichrist as symbols of wholeness and dissociation in Ion. The moral manager thinks they are the light, but they don't see their own darkness. They see evil in other people to keep up the appearance of being good, which makes them blind, dangerous, and unable to understand the complexities of the human mind. If you live close to this kind of person, you might feel like you're always wrong and guilty. You feel watched, judged, and less important, even when you're. The most unfair thing about this is that you might take this judgment personally, hide parts of yourself that aren't natural or planned, and change yourself to fit an ideal that isn't really yours. You are locked up by the morals of the other. In families, religious settings, and strict organizations, where obedience is seen as virtue, this kind of behavior is common. Jung thought this pattern was a real danger to the process of becoming an individual. When people are too moralistic, they don't know themselves well enough. Extreme moralists don't want to know the truth. They want to be in charge. When they can't control what's going on outside, they start to control what's going on inside the minds of the people around them. The moral manager is not the only one who is led by unconscious forces. There is also the complex person who is more volatile, unsteady, and hard to predict. The moralist hides and projects their feelings, but the complex person's feelings control their whole being, making them act like an emotional robot. We will talk more about this dangerous area where consciousness loses control and trauma take over the mind in the next part. Get ready to meet someone who will love you today but hurt you tomorrow without even realizing it. If what you're hearing hits home, my ebook Beyond the Shadow will really help you. It breaks down Jung's main idea and gives you tools for getting to know yourself better. Link in the reply that was pinned. It would be weird to live with someone who is kind, loving, and giving 1 minute and angry, silent, or accusing you of something you didn't even think of the next. It changes from a praise to a demand. A joke turns into anger. People see a sign of love as a threat. You always feel like you're walking on thin air, no matter what you do. This is what it's like to live with someone who is controlled by unconscious beliefs. Jung said that complexes are independent centers of emotion and memory that are stored in the unconscious and have the power to take over awareness at any time. They are like broken personalities inside us that are caused by stress, psychic wounds, and unresolved issues. Jung writes about these complexes in Psychological Types and the unconscious. He says that they can directly affect behavior, responding not to the present but to memories of the past. A simple comment can unknowingly carry memories of being abandoned, rejected, or shamed in the past. And those close to the person who made it pay the price. Most of the time, the complicated person doesn't know that these inner forces are guiding them. When they do something angry, sad, or resentful, they think they are be logical, but they are really just replaying feelings that they haven't processed yet. This doesn't happen all the time, it happens in spurts. There are outbursts of feeling mixed in with clear-headedness, love or regret. This makes being in a relationship with that person hard to handle and very needy. You start to believe that they aren't always this bad, sometimes they look great. They keep you hooked because these real times of affection and connection are what keep you going. But then there are unpredictable ruptures, which are stormy emotions you can't make sense of. To get back to a state of balance, you change, adapt, and shrink. You stay away from certain topics, watch what you say, and walk on eggshells to keep the monster inside you from coming out. But here's the harsh truth, you aren't making that monster come out. It's always been there ready to come out whenever it senses a threat. It eats everything around it when it does. Complexes that aren't identified tend to take over the mind. They talk, feel, and act for you. For the complicated person, this takeover happens all the time. They might be controlled by inferiority, martyrdom, rejection, or persecution complexes, each with its own stories, feelings, and demands. When you try to keep the peace, you give people the false impression that they can control. When you live with someone like this, you have to be on high watch all the time. There is no security in the emotions. There are always ghosts in the present. And eventually, you start to take in these ghosts. You start to doubt your memories, your thoughts, and even your You become part of the other person's mind without even realizing it. But the worst part is still to come. Because while the complex person goes back and forth between strong emotions, there is someone else who doesn't yet explode or blame, but uses up all of your energy until you have none left. We will talk about the psychic vampire in the last part. This is the person who takes your time, attention, and empathy, and then leaves you feeling tired, drained, and empty. Now that we've shown you what Jung thought was the way out of this unconscious jungle, the circle is over. People will do anything to drain you because they don't want to be around you. Not through direct violence or aggression, but through subtle demands, being a victim all the time, and emotional dependence that looks like love. This is the mental vampire, the most quiet and sneaky way that Jung warned people about losing their emotions, even if he didn't call it that. In Jungian terms, it stands for an unresolved symbiotic connection, a bad bond that stops psychic growth and blurs the edges of who we are. Jung's books, The Ego and the Unconscious and Ion show that symbiotic relationships, in which two people don't see themselves as different people but as psychic extensions of each other, are one of the biggest threats to individuation. You have to be available all the time to give the psychic vampire your full attention and help. But this neediness comes from a hole that you can't fill, and that isn't yours. You start by giving support, then time, and finally putting up with mental abuse until you realize you have no more energy left and have lost track of where you and the other is. The tiredness is deep. It's not just physical, it's psychological. Every day, it feels like your soul is being eaten away little by little. Jung said that people who are psychically unable to support themselves are attracted to other people like emotional parasites. The danger is not just being tired, but also losing who you are. You might start to feel bad about wanting space, selfish for wanting quiet, and cold for wanting to be away. It's easy for the mental vampire to switch roles, going from victim to accuser, or from needy to manipulative. Soon you'll be living your life to escape trouble, keep the peace, and keep a relationship going that's killing you on the inside. Jung gives us a way to get there, make the unconscious aware. This is true for us and for other people. Because maybe you've been a psychic vampire, a complicated person, or someone who plays that role at some time. Not one of us is safe. Everybody has a cloud and pain. The difference is whether someone is brave enough to look inside themselves or whether they choose to put that weight on other people.